Welcome to Season 9 of the award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor. I'm a retail educator, trainer and retail conference MC. Each week as your host, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share their knowledge and give you an insight into the retail industry. You can listen back to previous seasons on your favourite podcast platform, and while you're there, do me a favour, hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. You can watch us over on YouTube and subscribe to the Retail Tea Break because you've no idea how useful that is to ensure that I can keep bringing you the content that you love. And remember, sharing is caring in the retail industry. Share an episode across any of the platforms with your network. And if you're on social media, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. So, in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and enjoy Season 9 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. This episode is very kindly sponsored by RevLifter, the smarter way to run promotions that protect your profits. So instead of throwing discounts at everyone and watching margins vanish, RevLifter helps you make promotion budget work harder. Using real customer behaviour, it shows the right offer to the right person at the right time, turning browsers into buyers without destroying margins. RevLifter, smart promotions that deliver profit, not problems. So head over to www.revlifter.com and try intelligent offers free for the next 90 days. Go on, you won't regret it. Today I'm joined by a marketing director celebrating 30 years working with Dubarry of Ireland. The luxury brand focuses on premium performance side of footwear and clothing, specifically in the sailing, equestrian and country lifestyle world. With a marketing background that spans luxury stationery, digital, delivery and agri, today's guest has an incredible wealth of marketing experience to share. Michael Walsh, marketing director at Dubarry of Ireland, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thank you, Melissa.
I am thrilled to have you here. And I know we were chatting a few weeks ago, and it's funny, the gorgeous background you have behind me. Yeah, I look like that on my days off with the dog. I'm certainly a big fan of the brand. I have the boots, we have the jackets in the house. So this is just a gorgeous conversation to have. So look, to kick us off, in the age-old tradition of the Retail Tea Break podcast, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I am told is about 2 minutes, probably a little longer here in the west of Ireland, but about 2 minutes. Tell us a little bit more about you and your background in the industry.
Okay, as you mentioned, I joined Dubarry 30 years ago this November. And my background is a marketing background. I studied for a Bachelor of Commerce degree in UCG, as it was known then, now University of Galway. I did a master's following that in marketing and did a placement with Digital Computers, which was a big employer in the west of Ireland at the time, even though I worked in the marketing and sales headquarters in Dublin. Stayed with them for a couple of years, and then I worked for a freight subsidiary of DHL. This was at a time back then when DHL only carried documents. They had a subsidiary called Elan who did the actual freight packages. And then I went to the Middle East for my sins for 5 years, worked for Mastock Almarai. It was an Irish joint venture with a local Saudi company in the food business. So it was a fully integrated company with their own arable farms, dairy farms, processing plants, and I worked on the sales and marketing side. And then came back to Ireland and I worked for Cross Pens, who were actually based here in Ballinasloe at the time. They no longer have a facility here in Ireland, before joining Dubarry in 1995.
Wow, that's an unbelievable background that's brought you around the world, Michael. That's incredible. And again, I love the fact you've worked across industry. And I think sometimes an awful lot of people tell me, certainly on the podcast, that really feeds into their current role, because you're not just looking inwardly inside the industry you're in, but actually you look across other industries to take best practice and the way things are. But Dubarry them, and seeing again those gorgeous images behind you there, nearly 90 years old as a brand, which is unbelievable. But even up to kind of 20 years ago, I think of the first time I heard of the brand or I saw those deck shoes, Dubarry would have been known as a sailing footwear brand in many respects. Times obviously have changed. It's unbelievable now where yous are popping up, which is fantastic. Product offerings obviously develop, as has the brand. So I suppose in that respect, who are you today in 2025?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll probably a bit later on, I'll go through some of the evolution that we've been involved from a product point of view. But currently we operate under the umbrella of premium performance lifestyle. So you try to position yourself in the marketplace. And we've evolved from being a manufacturer for nearly 70 years to now We are a design, distribution, and brand management entity because we don't no longer have a production facility in Ireland. All of our production is outsourced, and it's Portugal, it's Italy, it's Poland, it's the Far East. Very diverse. We go to wherever we can find the best producer of a footwear item or a garment or a leather accessory. But because we were a manufacturer, I think craftsmanship and our own Irish heritage are a really important part of our DNA. And in terms of craftsmanship, the primary materials that we work with are leather, obviously, tweed, wool, and waxed cotton. But we've also introduced a lot of new technology, such as the ingredient components that we use in both our footwear and our clothing. So we've got materials like Gore-Tex, which is waterproof and breathable. We've got Primaloft in a lot of our clothing, which offers protection against inclement weather. So it offers warmth. So most of our wax jackets have Primaloft fill inside, because a wax jacket can be quite cold and quite brittle if it doesn't have a soft filling. That's for, if you like, the winter time in terms of the inclement weather. But we also then, on the sailing side of our business, we have features like UPF 50 sun protection, anti-odor, antimicrobial properties in a lot of our sailing footwear and clothing, because they're used in a different weather environment, different conditions. So it's incorporating the technology into the craftsmanship. And one of the things in terms of us as a brand, we use the landscape of Ireland and our proximity to the rugged, wild Atlantic way in our imagery to support our brand positioning. It's very much part of, if you're a brand selling leather boots, wax jackets, tweed, the ruggedness of the west of Ireland just it's a perfect marriage in terms of how you communicate that to the consumer.
And I love it. So again, own them. I was telling you I'm wearing a pair of your boots in my engagement pictures because we live in the worst weather in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Some of the time, it can be absolutely awful, but they stand the test of time. And the quality, if you've never ever put your hands on a pair of these boots, for instance, the quality is unmatched. So I love the fact that you're going to the best places in the world to now make these that have it is the best finished. It's the most beautiful product. It's the most incredible materials, and they last, which is exactly what the customer wants. And I think that's why you have such a loyal customer base and a really loyal following. But on that, then you see that kind of quality really start to seep through the way you show up. So not just the imagery that even we see there behind you, but in your stores, which is something I love. The care and attention that goes into your shop fit, that goes into your range, that as you see it in store or in pop-ups that we're certainly going to talk about because it's amazing, is unrivaled in many respects because the attention to detail, just like in the product, is absolutely there. So for you, retail is massive because you're obviously meeting the consumer D2C. You have your online channel, you have your physical stores, obviously College Green here in Dublin, you've got the Sloane Square store in London, and you also have this incredible kind of wholesale operation where you're feeding into various independents and retailers across the globe. How does that retail operation come together and work?
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, just going back again in terms of how we have evolved from we were a niche player in footwear, and we evolved over time to a brand that offers choice for all seasons across footwear, clothing, leather goods, and accessories. And 15 years ago, certainly in Ireland and the UK, 95% of our distribution was via the wholesale channel, with about 5% through pop-up retail. But as our collections grew in terms of choice, we soon realized that own retail was essential to showcase the brand in its entirety, because with the best will in the world, no independent retailer is going to carry the full spectrum of products that you offer because they've got other brands that they need to facilitate. So we made the decision back in 2012 to open a store in College Green in Dublin. We thought Ireland was appropriate to be the first place to open a store. And that was followed pretty quickly then in 2013 when we opened on the King's Road in Chelsea. And then in 2016, we opened in Cheltenham. And in fact, during the pandemic, we relocated from the store in Cheltenham was really a kind of a boutique style outlet. And we moved to a much larger store on the main drag, the Promenade in Cheltenham. And to be honest with you, we took advantage of the upheaval that there was in bricks and mortar retail during the pandemic, and we got a very good deal on a very good premises. And I suppose in the same way as our business in Ireland and the UK was predominantly wholesale driven, our international business was also primarily done through third-party distributors in Europe, in the US, and in Australasia. And pretty much as part of the same strategy of getting involved in retail, in 2014, we started a process of acquiring some of our better distributors and establishing our own subsidiary companies in the UK, in Europe, and in the US, to a point today where, in addition to the retail stores that I've just mentioned, we have offices and operations here in Ireland as our headquarters in Ballinasloe. We also have operations in Oxford in the UK, Utrecht in the Netherlands to service mainland Europe, and then in Pennsylvania to cover the Americas. And we are now selling via a team of fully employed Dubarry area sales managers in all of those markets, and we only have a limited number of distributors remaining. So, like own retail, it allows us to control the narrative and be less reliant on external third parties.
And I love that because it's quite unique. But again, you hold the control in many respects, but also you know exactly what's being said, what's going out there. The love, care, and attention that you have, and only you can have for your brand, is shared then obviously by the guys on the ground who are selling into independents or retailers across the world in that aspect. A massive part of what you do. And I think this is quite unusual because I was trying to think of other brands that might do this, but pop-up shops and pop-up stores at events and different kind of shows across the world are huge for you.
Yeah, they're very important. And we actually did our first pop-up 25 years ago.
Wow.
We're actually setting up today at Burley Horse Trials in the UK. So that goes on this coming weekend. And but funnily enough, it came about when, as we mentioned earlier, our history was very much footwear and sailing, has been the primary source of our business. And in the early 2000s, we developed an outdoor boot, which is called the Galway boot, and it in essence is the country cousin of our Shamrock sailing boot. It's instead of it being navy, it's brown, it's taller because it's a knee-high boot, but in every other respect, apart from the outsole, it's essentially the same construction. And this was essentially an all-leather Gore-Tex line, waterproof, breathable, knee-high boot designed to do anything that you could do in a rubber boot. And however, it was retailing at about 5 times the price of the rubber boots that were available in the marketplace. And because it was a first in the marketplace, retailers were understandably skeptical and reluctant to list it. But we believed that there would be a demand for such a product, having successfully sold the sailing boot for many years. But what we lacked was the kind of necessary brand awareness with those country lifestyle retailers to take that chance with us. So following a series of largely unsuccessful trade shows, footwear trade shows in Dusseldorf, Milan, in the NEC in Birmingham, where the retailers, they just didn't get it. The eureka moment for us was a decision to bypass the retail channels and to go directly to the end user. And essentially pop-up retail Dubarry style was born out of necessity. So it consisted of us attending a wide variety of different events. You mentioned equestrian events, there was gardening shows, there was dog shows, game fairs. And we went out and we presented ourselves in a marquee in the middle of a field, but interior was a country manor interior with Chesterfield suites, serving champagne, with very well dressed and well presented staff, almost like a high-end country house hotel without the rooms. The objective was to identify events that the public attended where we believed it would have a requirement for those boots if we could get the opportunity to demonstrate that they could perform better than the rubber boots that they were wearing. And in the early days, and probably with a bit of drink-inspired creativity in the middle of a field somewhere, we decided on the man in the bucket, as we call him. So people love the look and profile of the boots, but the most frequently asked question that we were being asked was, but they're leather, can they really be waterproof? Can I wear them in the mud and the rain? And the man or person in the bucket has served us really well for the last 25 years because they're out the front of the stand. They stand in a bucket of water, and from people who don't speak English to the youngest kids, they pretty much quickly cop on what it is that you're demonstrating. So it's part of the engagement. It gets people engaged with the brand, gets them into the stand, and gives you the opportunity to explain what the products are capable of. And today we're going to probably 150 plus events across Ireland, the UK, France, Germany, Scandinavia, the Benelux, and the US.
That's unbelievable, Michael. And you say that like it's just a kind of a little thing is do, but I think this proves to the public or the consumer not only the quality of the product, but the essence and the values that Dubarry has. Because as you say, you have incredibly impeccably presented people, but they're knowledgeable. They really know and understand not only who your consumer is and what they're looking for, but also exactly how your pieces work and how those two things marry together. And I think that's for me what's always stood out is your service level. Not only, if you're thinking about buying a pair of boots, but even afterwards, every little touch point is there that you really do bring that consumer on a gorgeous journey. And then, of course, they're with you for life. And on that, then, how have you had to adapt to a very changing kind of consumer need or even want over the last kind of 20, 25 years?
Yeah, I suppose in some respects, in a product sense, probably there hasn't been very significant change because our our products are very classical in nature.
Mm,
I would say in terms of changing consumer needs or indeed changing consumer habits, the single biggest innovation that I've seen in my career, and probably anybody of my age, has been the advent of digital marketing and all the associated apps and technology that we now have in the palms of our hands. It's been a game changer in terms of how to communicate with the end user. And going back to our own retail stores and indeed pop-up retail, the noise between the brand and the consumer has largely been eliminated because they can communicate directly with you and you them in terms of what your values are, what your products are. As I said, in a product sense, our designs are very classic in nature and they have great longevity. We actually developed a strapline a number of years ago called Buy Better, Last Longer,
mm.
because of the movement towards or the sustainability and the environment. We're having a very significant impact on consumer choice and consumer behavior. And we've put a huge effort in our own supply chain in terms of the component materials that we use, with a big emphasis on recyclability, sustainability. And I think they're probably the biggest changes that we've noticed in recent years.
That's fantastic to hear, actually, that you are moving with the times, that you're listening to what the consumer needs, but also you are for yourselves evolving. Any kind of challenges that you've met over the last few years that stand out?
And on the retail side, I would say finding the right locations at the right
Yeah.
rental price has been one of the greatest challenges. And also, indeed, for a time, and anybody in retail probably listening or watching will recognize the real challenges and difficulties there was immediately post pandemic in terms of retail staff. That was a huge challenge. We had a massive churn of staff over a 2 year period, but thankfully that's pretty much settled down now. And retail does bring its challenges in terms of there are issues in Dublin City. We've got a lot of antisocial behaviour on the streets. It can be quite an intimidating environment. I heard the new Garda Commissioner on the radio at lunchtime today talking about getting more uniforms on the street, and that's certainly welcome news to hear. But there are challenges in that area, and they were probably a consequence of the pandemic in terms of
Mm,
the aftermath. But I would say, I suppose our philosophy about our retail outlets is that we really see them as being there to offer the consumer a positive brand experience, either whether they're a returning customer or they're a first timer that's walked into the store. And we're pretty agnostic about where the consumer actually buys, whether it's in our store, whether it's online, it's at one of the pop-up events, or indeed through one of our retail partners. The most important thing for us is that the consumer leaves the store well informed to make a choice and a purchase decision. And in many cases, they may just be browsing for a gift idea, either for themselves, so they can drop a hint to a spouse or a partner, or indeed for a friend or a family member. The idea for us is that they'll at least leave with a catalogue or a little wish list card that we have that'll detail the style, the color, the size that they've seen. And that's really important. So the experience in the store is really important, and we try to replicate that at the events and in our own retail stores. And it's really, when we get feedback from people, oftentimes you'll hear people say, you hear the negative feedback. It's lovely to hear the positive feedback. We get some lovely notes and emails in from visitors who've been in the stores in Dublin or London or Cheltenham, just recognizing the service that they've received. And I think probably for us, one of the things that's really important is there isn't a hard sell approach in the stores. The staff aren't, they're not on commissions. They're not there pushing. And we've all had that experience where it's very obvious that you're dealing with somebody who just wants a sale. Or we see our retail associates' job to be more about education that will help in the purchase decision. Whether it happens there or comes afterwards is pretty much immaterial for us.
Oh, I wish more retailers had that outlook, because it's definitely the way of not only enticing but keeping loyal customers long term, which is exactly what Dubarry's done. It's interesting there that you mentioned those little kind of wishlet notes that you can write, the little added touches that you do with that, because obviously your background is in marketing, you're very aware of these little extras that add such huge value to the customer. What are your tips to any of those listening when it comes to working with such an iconic brand? What are the nice bits, or even, I suppose, the hard touch points that you should be looking out for now to drive a business forward?
I suppose I would say probably the most important thing is listening to your customers, especially your end users, if you're lucky enough to have the platform to do that, because oftentimes the middlemen, be they retailers, distributors, or indeed salespeople, can lead you astray. So the consumer will invariably call it as it is. So wherever you have the opportunity to engage with your end user, grab it with both hands. It's really valuable time to get to hear people talk about their experiences. Whether we're talking about, I'll give you an example. Actually, I talked about that transition from the sailing boot to the country boot, and that came about over 20 years ago with two Dutch guys they were sponsored sailors of ours. They wore our sailing boots to all the top regattas in the world. We were at a trade show in Amsterdam. We were in a pub having a couple of drinks with them. And one of them happened to mention that he used his sailing boots out shooting. And our design director at the time was very keen at shooting and fishing. And he said to him, they're not designed for that. They're designed for the flat surface of a boat. And when he came back, he took a pair of the sailing boots and he actually cut off the sailing sole and stuck on a cleated heavy sole and sent two pairs on to the two guys. They came back and said, this is exactly what we need. And that came about through just listening to somebody and we were able to take that application in a product that was designed for sailing to keep your feet warm, breathable, comfortable, and just apply it into a different area with a very minor modification. So listen to the customer, I would say, is the most important thing. The other thing that's important, particularly for anybody that's involved in any type of product development, which obviously we are, is getting it right first time and only launching something when you're 100% comfortable and have tested it thoroughly, that you're convinced that putting it into the marketplace, you've dotted all the I's and crossed the T's. And then I suppose finally, from a branding marketing perspective, I would say we've put a great value in investing in really strong visual assets for the brand, be they photography historically and now more so video, that can help capture the essence of what your brand and your products are about. So yeah, say listen to your customers, get it right first time, and invest in good, strong visual assets.
Oh, May, brilliant tips there. And I love that story because it just proves, as you say, your incredible boots wouldn't have come about had two very loyal people to the brand actually told you there was a need there, which is so interesting. And as they say, there's no such thing as bad weather, there's bad clothing. Not when you come to Dubarry, there's not, because I tell you, they see you right. Doesn't matter how bad the weather is or how mucky the walk is that you're on with your dogs. They definitely see you right. It's so amazing, but it's gorgeous to hear that story, Michael. But look, last question, because we could definitely chat all day, because I think I've said a million times now how big a fan I am of the brand. But look, last question. Heading into the golden quarter, it'll be just as busy for you as it will be for all kind of retailers and brands out there. So what's coming up next for you and the team?
We're about to open a new store in Edinburgh. We hope to be open there in a fortnight's time. So we took possession of it about a month ago. We fully re-kitted it out, and we're just getting things like signage and security systems and all that nice stuff finally installed, but hopefully be open there within 2 weeks' time. We're also fairly well progressed on sourcing a second outlet in London in the West End. So we're well covered over on the King's Road side in Chelsea. But we felt for a long time that there's an opportunity for us to have a store in the West End. We've identified a premises there and we're in negotiations with the landlord, and we hope to be open there in time for Christmas. So that puts a bit of pressure on the system between now and Christmas. In a product sense, we've launched a new range of equestrian boots that have just recently gone into the marketplace, and that's just an obvious extension of where we are, because the boots that we have at the moment are country lifestyle boots. They're not performance riding boots, but we have launched a range of equestrian riding boots. We also have a dog accessory collection in the pipeline. Again,
Will
another
that be out in
obvious
time for
add.
Christmas? Just asking for a friend there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we could be able to sort that out. And also we're working on a collection of performance waterproof trainers for outdoor use. So we're seeing, quite a significant trend right across the board with trainers, but trainers that are designed for a purpose. A lot of the people who are using our boots will also use a trainer. We're looking at a performance waterproof trainer that they can use in those outdoor usage situations. And then obviously, as you say, the golden quarter and Christmas is a really important time for us, both online, in store, and in servicing our retail partners. The run into Christmas is fairly hectic, certainly for our retail staff, who'll all be looking forward to a well-earned and well-deserved rest on the 25th and 26th of December. And yeah, that's the run in for us. In our business, we're always planning ahead. So, for example, next month in October, we'll have all of our international salespeople into Galway, actually, where we're going to present them with our autumn-winter 26 collection. But the cycles are moving fast. But yeah, we won't feel it before Christmas has arrived.
Ever evolving. I love that. But that's why the brand's been around for so long, because you continue to grow and develop. And it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So fair play to you and the team. No doubt a busy few weeks and a few months ahead. But look, if you've enjoyed today's podcast episode, please do like and share it from any podcast platforms with your network. And of course, if you're on social media, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. Listen back to previous seasons on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, do me a favor, please hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. Watch us over on YouTube and subscribe to the Retail Tea Break, because you've no idea how useful that is to me as well. To connect with myself and Michael on LinkedIn, as well as, of course, following Dubarry across their social media platforms, and I'll obviously pop all the details and their website link into the show notes. Michael, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Pleasure.
Thank you again to RevLifter for sponsoring today's episode. Remember, RevLifter help e-commerce businesses use smarter promotions and turns more visitors into customers without killing profits. Head to www.revlifter.com and try intelligent offers free for the next 90 days.